Hello and welcome to PLZ Soccer's YouTube channel. I'm joined today by Graeme Macpherson, Scottish sports writer and Borussia Dortmund aficionado and keen follower. Graeme, even the most optimistic of Borussia Dortmund fans, they couldn't have seen themselves getting to a Champions League final, could they?
No, definitely not, Blair. I mean, you look back to how last season ended with them blowing the chance to win the Bundesliga on the last day of the season. So there wasn't a huge amount of optimism going into this season. And then domestically, again, they've really struggled. They're finished fifth in the season this year, which is probably a lot worse than people would have expected from them. But the Champions League has given them real, succour. It's been a brilliant journey. They were in the group of death with Milan and PSG and Newcastle. Nobody gave them a hope of even getting out of the group. So then to go from there all the way to the final, I think that's really exceeded even the most optimistic of Dortmund fans couldn't have possibly expected this.
Like you touched on there, fifth in the Bundesliga and obviously this exceptional run all the way to the final at Wembley. What really has been the main difference between the form in the European stage and domestically?
I'd say domestically, although they've been struggling, they're still seen as one of the bigger teams in Germany. And then, when you go to play some of the smaller teams in the Bundesliga, there's an expectation on Dortmund to be in the front foot, to dominate possession, to take the game to the opposition, which maybe the way this team's set up, it doesn't really suit them. Whereas in Europe against stronger teams, Paris, Milan, Newcastle, we touched upon, they'll have less of the ball. They can play their counter-attacking style. They've got guys like Jadon Sancho, Karim Adeyemi, Jamie Bynoe-Gittens, guys like that who are really fast and playing the counter. And that's kind of fitted their strengths in Europe this season, and that's taken them all the way to the final.
There has been a little bit about this Dortmund team, the likes of Mats Hummels, Jadon Sancho, Niklas Füllkrug, guys who maybe cast off from other teams and they've kind of found a home at Dortmund. Do you think they are really excelling in that underdog bracket in this Champions League run?
Yeah, definitely. I know there's guys, as you say, who maybe aren't that fancied, maybe wouldn't get a place in the bigger teams, but they find a home at Dortmund. Edin Terzic, the head coach, has managed to get the best out of them. And you kind of touched on guys there, maybe Niklas Füllkrug, a kind of old school centre forward, battering ram kind of guy. You don't really see too many of these days. Mats Hummels, a guy who absolutely loves a slide tackle. Again, not the sort of defending that we're used to, but it's been really effective for Dortmund this season. And, touching on Hummels and also Marco Reus as well, for these guys who played in the 2013 Champions League final when they lost to Bayern, this is like a final chance at redemption for the pair of them. So be hugely significant for the team as a whole, but I think for Reus and Hummels in particular, this is going to be a massive game against Madrid.
Across both teams, who really would be the key men for you on both sides that could define where this final goes?
I think from Dortmund's point of view, you'd be looking to Jadon Sancho. He's been a guy, rejuvenated since leaving Manchester United to come back to Dortmund. He was a huge fans' favourite the first time he was at the Westfalen. He's come back and people say, maybe you shouldn't go back to your former club, but he's really hit it off again. And if they can get the ball wide to him and get him running at defenders and turning, then I think he could be a kind of key player for them. And I guess maybe predictable to say, but Vinicius, I guess the guy you look to for Madrid, he'll be up against probably Julian Ryerson, who's been a good defender for Dortmund, but hasn't really been tested at this level. So again, I think if Madrid will be looking to get Vinicius on the ball as often as they can, to test Ryerson, to see if they can maybe draw him into a couple of rash tackles early on and see how he copes with that. So I think it'll be those two guys, the two white guys, who could maybe define the final for one of these teams.
How big of an impact do you think the Jude Bellingham factor is going to have for Real Madrid? Obviously, going back to face his former club, he spoke after that semi-final about how it was almost like fated that he was coming up against Dortmund again. Do you think that'll have a big effect in the game?
Yeah, I think definitely. I mean, he left Birmingham as a boy and he went to Dortmund and he left as a man to go to Madrid. I think he was maybe only 17 or 18 when he joined up with Dortmund, and those 2 years were really special in his development. We saw him come on from a guy who had potential to become really a kind of really influential figure, one of the leading players in world football, a full England international, and since then he's gone on to Madrid and he's really kicked on again. I think we're talking about a talent that will be one of the best players for the next decade and beyond. So there is obviously that emotional angle. I think he would rather have not been up against Dortmund in a final like this, but I think Dortmund will have to really kind of keep a close eye on him. Guys like, Emre Can, Julian Brandt are going to have to really mark him closely, because if Bellingham gets to sort of strut his stuff and have his say, then he could really dominate this final as well.
Undoubtedly, one of the stories leading up to this final has been Marco Reus and his decision to ultimately leave Dortmund after this game. Just, if you can you sum up what he means to Dortmund as this figurehead who's been there for so many years, and what it would mean for him to bow out on a high this weekend?
Yeah, definitely. Marco Reus in Germany say Dortmund are young. He's a Dortmund boy, a guy born and bred in the city, grew up a BVB fan, was let to leave from the youth side of Dortmund in his first spell, which I guess, sometimes these things happen and young talent slip through the net. But he went to Gladbach for a few years and then they got him back in 2012. So he's been 12 seasons as the fulcrum of this team, the beating heart of Dortmund. He's had his injury problems, unfortunately, that maybe denied him some big events with both Germany and Dortmund. But he's back fit again. I think when he announced he was going to be leaving at the end of the season, maybe a month ago, they didn't know yet that we were going to be playing the final. But what a fitting way it would be for Marco Reus to bow out from his boyhood club if he could lift the trophy on Saturday. I mean, that would be an absolute fairy tale. And then, we wait to see if he keeps playing beyond the summer. But it would be a really, really special moment if he could lift that trophy in front of all the Dortmund fans at Wembley.
And another man who you touched on earlier that was in that final back when they lost at Wembley the last time round, Mats Hummels, he's come out with some interesting, to say the least, comments this week around boss Edin Terzic and the style of play they've been adopting this season. He said he was really one of the catalysts for change in the winter break. Do you think that can help spur Dortmund on, or is the timing of this just completely off 3 days before a Champions League final?
Mats is one of these guys that he's never really kept his thoughts to himself. He's always been really outspoken. He just kind of says whatever's on his mind at that particular time. And I think Edin Terzic and the rest of the squad are maybe used to that by now. They realise that he's going to come out with things that aren't always maybe complimentary to the team or maybe not seem hugely helpful. But I think maybe they're used to that now. I know Mats has also been a bit annoyed that he hasn't made the Germany squad for the Euros. Only 2 Dortmund players that have made the cut there. But I think we'll see on Saturday night. He's going to play like a man possessed. He's almost certainly leaving Dortmund as well in the summer. We don't know what's going to happen after that. So we've seen how influential he's been in this run to the final. He scored his goal against PSG in the semi-final. And I think we'll be seeing some big tackles and some big moments from Mats again at Wembley.
Just an interesting little footnote. There could be a couple of £1 million tacked on to Jude Bellingham's price tag from Real Madrid. They may have to pay a little bit more if they beat Dortmund on Saturday.
Yeah, it's a bit of a quirky one, isn't it? That I think they'll actually make more money by losing the final than maybe by winning it. But yeah, Dortmund would love the money from if that happens, but I think they'd probably rather have the trophy because it's been 1997. Dortmund were the champions of Europe the last time, and obviously that huge disappointment in 2013 when they lost to Bayern. So if they could get another Champions Cup back in the trophy cabinet in Dortmund, I think they'd be delighted.
And finally, Graeme, just before we go, what's your score predictions for Saturday night?
My head probably says a Madrid win, but I'm going down there to join the BVB fans, so I'm going to say 2-1 to Dortmund.
Graeme, thanks very much for joining us.